All right. Hi, guys. Welcome to review number 9. Starting off with a few laughs. So this week we thought we'd try something a bit different. I think Jaime stole the easy way out here, and I've got a guest, our first guest, Zane Webster. So a little bit of background on Zane. Zane studied at UWC. He has a master's in sports science, high performance. And Zane is currently working for Eastern's Cricket as well as Cricket South Africa in the academy as a strength and conditioning coach. So he's got the research background as well as the full lot of research within professional practice. So Zane, let me just get your title so everyone knows what the title is. So his title his research that we'll be discussing today is titled A Comparison of the Physical Demands of a One-Day Cricket Game and the Training Sessions of Provincial Cricket Players using GPS tracking software. So Zane, what got you to do this research? What got you interested in doing this research?
Well, for me, it was initially the need to understand that kind of information, especially for the current level that I was working at, which was at the university cricket level, and also for where I wanted to go, which was obviously to follow the sort of pipeline steps in terms of going from university or club level into provincial cricket, and then obviously franchise and national. So I felt that the information that I would have gathered, or that I have gathered from the study, was going to be beneficial to me as an SNC or a young SNC looking to sort of start my path onto becoming a professional sort of strength and conditioning coach. So that's basically why I sought to do this kind of research.
Oh, sorry, I realized I was on mute there. That could have ended badly. So that's interesting. And you've obviously progressed quite a bit from then for those last 4 years. So you did a little bit of work in the university, seeing a few varsity cups, and now you're with Easterns and the academy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Cool. So talking about this research, how did you go about, well, first of all, what was your question? What were you trying to answer exactly, just for the viewers and listeners out there?
Well, basically, I was trying to answer the question of whether or not cricket teams were preparing well enough in order to compete during a game. And especially, I think what I really tried to do was to do it from a week-to-week basis. I mean, it's no use that we sort of record the physical demands of training sessions in this week, but 5 weeks' time, it might be a different part of the season or whatever the case may be. So I really tried to nail it down and knuckle down to sort of one format as well as a specific period of time, instead of, doing 1 week here and in 6 weeks' time doing another week. So it was more to see whether or not we as cricketers are training to meet the demands of a match. Are bowlers doing similar loads? Are batters covering similar distances and are they undertaking similar internal and external workloads? That was mainly what I was looking at.
Yeah. Okay. So, and for everyone that doesn't know,
there's a massive perception that cricket training, it doesn't necessarily meet the demands of.
Yes.
And obviously at the professional level, you'll find that it's a lot more accurate or a lot more closely matched, but for generally around the country, at least here, you'll find that the intensity is a lot lower. Guys take the piss during training.
Yeah, absolutely.
Instead of doing what they need to do.
Yeah. So for everyone that doesn't know, Zane's had a couple of, he's had ACL tear and ACL reconstruction. So that's around about the time I actually met Zane, or met him just before that. So he's used to the training workload demands of cricket, because I think Zane will attest we had some of the toughest training regimes probably in club cricket when we were playing at UWC. If I'm not mistaken, Zane, it was some of the toughest physical demands training in terms of cricket, at least. So how did you go about this research? So what did you do? So you obviously used GPS. So what did you actually do in the research?
Speaking about the GPS, it was actually a massive challenge to get that kind of equipment, especially, I don't think anyone at UWC used it before, so I didn't have much reference point, But basically what I did was, once I did eventually, after a 2-year period, secure the units. I managed to find a space where I could use both the amateur side and the professional side, because that's sort of what I did. I compared amateur cricket to professional cricket. Luckily, the window that I got the units in, luckily both teams were sort of available during that time. So what I did was I monitored 4 games from each team during an 8-week period. So the first 4 weeks I did. Luckily, there were the fixtures and everything sort of just fell into place. So 4 weeks of training and matches in consecutive weeks at the club level as well as the provincial level. That's basically in a nutshell what I did. So all the training sessions leading up to a specific match of that week, and then also the match of that week. I sort of monitored those things. Yeah.
Okay, so and then I noticed you obviously used some of the metrics you used were obviously speed as well as heart rate, maximum average heart rate, which I'll let you get into it, but there's some interesting data that I think we could speak to. And then in a snapshot, just from what you remember that, so what I will do is let me share my screen just to get to some of the important points of the study published in 2018, was it, Zane?
Yeah.
Cool. So, I mean, these are just some of your tables. Is there anything you'd like me to go to? Anything that really stood out for you in your results that you did not expect or confirmed your hypothesis?
Look, initially, I suppose the someone from the outside would be surprised that a university training session would yield sort of higher demands than a provincial training session. But I think what a lot of people won't know is that the UWC environment, a lot of them were ex-professionals, and they actually operate at a fairly professional level. So that sort of didn't surprise me too much. But obviously, from a data perspective, it's people would obviously question as to how a sort of university or club side or amateur side would sort of operate at a higher level in terms of demands than a provincial side. But I think there's obviously a lot of factors that weren't taken into account. So sort of things like weather conditions and all those kind of things, at what sort of exactly what was the goals for the training session, so to speak. What maybe for that specific training session in that week, even though yes, it was both one-day games that the teams were preparing for, maybe for that specific session the coaches said that the players need to take it easy and things, so that those are the kind of things that my research didn't really know to take into account, so all those things could have obviously affected the results.
Yes.
But no real surprises. I think most of my hypotheses were sort of in line with the results that I got.
Cool. And then, as myself and Dan, we've been doing this for a few weeks, and we know it's not easy. You can't control every variable, right? Just not. There's no such thing as perfect science. So as long as you can look back and understand, potentially. But so, what were your results in a nutshell?
There's a lot of just to touch on there is actually a lot of variables, and especially with cricket, you actually can't control sort of the especially in terms of games, you can't control what the outcome of a game. You can't decide how long a guy's going to bat. He can train as hard. He can train as hard as he likes during the week, but he can nick off first ball and then that's it.
Yeah,
so I think ideally you just want to make sure that they are prepared for the longest sort of possible situation that they can face themselves or that they can face in a match.
Absolutely, because you did mention in this paper somewhere as well that a batsman scoring 100 in the previous research has been shown to on average cover 3.2 kilometers roughly, if I'm not mistaken, which is, and if he bats the whole day, so in a multi-day game, he's looking at about 8 kilometers.
Yeah.
So that is, I mean, So, or he could run 0 meters, right? As you mentioned, so one day you're running not a single meter.
Yeah, therein lies the challenge as SNC in cricket.
Absolutely.
How do you make sure the players are actually where they need to be?
Yes, absolutely. And then, so obviously, I mean, preparing for that worst case scenario or best case if you're a batsman, running
Yeah.
those 3Ks. And what were your results? Because obviously, the main difference seemed to be with batting. What were, just in a quick nutshell, what were your main results from the study?
Um, Obviously, we found that bowlers cover the most distances, and
Yep.
they take on the highest internal and external workload. And then we also found that batters, I think what was interesting for me is that batters also spent quite a significant amount of time in low intensity sort of activity, which is not really what you expect in a one day game. You know,
Yeah.
you'd expect the running between the wickets to be slightly more high intensity, but it's from a scientific point of view, it's actually quite noteworthy, especially when you're preparing players. I mean, I know beforehand you'd think that you'd have to, just as an example, as an SNC, if you are preparing batters for a one day match and you have them sort of mimicking the running between the wickets, you generally push the high intensity running a lot more. You know,
Yeah.
obviously if you have the live feedback in training, it's going to be much better than obviously using your eye. But I think that for me that was quite interesting in terms of the batters specifically, is that they didn't do as much high intensity running between the wickets as you'd expect, you know,
Yes.
or cover as much distance at a high intensity pace than what you'd expect.
Yes.
Maybe
So
that's like maybe the first 3 or 4 steps would be sort of high intensity, and the rest they'd sort of slow down and then turn and do whatever, you know.
yes.
Obviously, time motion analysis would if you include that in the study, it would provide a lot more accurate data as well.
Absolutely. So, I mean, and the scary part is even the amount of sprinting that they do, which you mentioned was slightly less than what you'd expect. They're still not even reaching those demands in training. So because as you said, obviously the net isn't a live simulation because you're just batting. You're not running between the wickets. So that, I mean, has that informed your practice in any way? You know, do you actively seek the coaches and say, no, you know, these guys, we need to get kilometers under their belts or whatever the case is. You know, we can't just have them bat. We need to have them prepared for those 3K sprints.
Yeah, look, it's definitely something that I've used even before I found even before these results were sort of found. I mean, I think we mentioned it earlier that logic just suggests that if you're not mimicking what you're doing in training for a match, then you're not going to meet the demands. But obviously, you need the sort of research and the evidence to support it. And I definitely tried to sort of incorporate that, and not just high intensity running, but running with your cricket equipment on. I
Yes.
mean, there has been research that found that running with equipment on does add a significant load, especially internally, in
Yes.
terms of heart rate and those things. So that's definitely something that I'd advise a lot of people to do if they are involved in strength and conditioning in cricket.
Yes. And Zane, have you found, this might be going a little bit off topic, but obviously you mentioned some of the other variables that you've got in cricket. Obviously, the one variable
Yeah,
as a batsman is nerves. Obviously, that's going to naturally increase your heart rate, especially when you've got some guy bowling 140, 150 clicks about to run up at
yeah.
you. Do you have any strategies for that in the nets? Have you seen any novel ways that coaches have used that to try and increase the stakes if you were in a net situation to try to mimic that?
Yeah, yeah. So what we've my coach at Easton's, he's very good. He's also a buyer, by the way. So
Okay.
him and I have a very good understanding. It's nice to have a coach that actually understands a bit more in depth the science side of things, you know.
Yes.
But scenario training, even if it's just in a net and not sort of a middle practice, we do scenario training, which really lifts the intensity of a match or of a training session, so to
Yes.
speak. Sort of if you nick off, then you're gone, you know,
Okay.
those kind of
Yes.
things. It really does. Look, in our environment, we sort of created a culture of that natural competition between guys. So there isn't really much. It will be very interesting for me to see if I do the exact same study with my guys at Eastern. So it will be interesting to see the kind of load or the results that it does give.
Absolutely interesting. And then just last point from my side is, where do you see the future of cricket research? Where do you feel there's a lack? Where do you think, for looking at aspiring researchers or even SNC coaches, where should we be looking? Where's next for you?
Well, for me specifically, and it's actually something that I'm going to look into now with my PhD. It's just looking at everything from a sort of holistic perspective in terms of all practices that we do as SNCs and how it relates to sort of injury risk or players getting injured or injury occurrence. Just for me personally, I'm not sure. I'm sure a hell of a lot of other SNCs do it in all sports, but to monitor as many things as what you can, obviously with as much objective data as what you can gather, but obviously with budget restrictions and things, especially for me at least, since the guys don't have objective equipment, so no heart rate data or whatever. A couple of guys have GPS watches and things, but that's about it. So looking at everything in a holistic manner. So monitoring recovery, monitoring exactly what the guys are doing in training on a day-to-day basis, and how it sort of corresponds to what they're doing in matches. I think around the world, there's not enough scientists involved in the game of cricket specifically. I know it's part of a conversation that we had earlier, but that's just my opinion. Especially in this country, South Africa, we are lacking immensely in terms of actual scientists being on the ground involved with the game. What I mean by scientist, I don't mean someone that has an honors or a master's degree. A scientist is someone that takes interest in research and actually collecting information and sort of analyzing and interpreting that information in order to help you better your practice, So I don't think we have enough of that at the moment. I think a massive reason is because we don't have a body of, so like the UK has it, they have it in America, the NSCA. So like we don't have that yet, and it really, I think if someone could start it in South Africa, it would go a long way to research being developed and practices being developed in this country. I think that's a massive contributing factor as to why countries like the UK and America and Australia and China, I think all these countries that have these bodies that support this research and can sort of guide practitioners as to where they need to go and what they need to do and how they need to go about their business. I think that's a massive reason why they're leaders in world sports. Football, Olympics especially. I think the Olympics is the number one. Like if you look at countries that do well in the Olympics, I think that gives you an idea of the practices that they do in the country.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
No, that's fascinating. And then, well, that's all from my side. Dan, do you have any questions on the research or general research cricket questions for Zane?
Yeah, I don't want to go back over the ground you've already covered too much, James. But I guess my question for Zane is, ultimately, when you think of load monitoring cricket, it's almost always associated with bowling or fast bowlers in particular. But what your research identified, and you mentioned that it was anticipated, but the actual fact that batsmen in training cover or don't cover any sprint distance, and obviously they do in one-day games. Were you noticing any higher rates of injury in your batsmen over your bowlers, simply down to the fact that they obviously weren't prepared, or they weren't being prepared sufficiently in training when it came to performing those sprint actions in the game?
Not necessarily significant injuries per se, but there have been a couple of hamstring issues in batters, and I really feel that is a massive contributing factor. We all know the strain that sprinting has or high intensity running has on the hamstrings, So I think to me that's a massive contributing factor. The fact that they have this load, these pads, and I know the equipment has been massively developed, to make it light and things, but it's still an external load that's on the body, and I think it's important that we prepare them in that way. You're not going to prepare a power lifter. You're not going to tell him to lift your TV to prepare him. You're going to have him lift 350 pounds, which is what he's going to have to lift in the Olympics, just as an example. So I think it's very important.
And you addressed it in your discussion really well, in the sense of that batsmen need to be conditioned, and that there needs to be an emphasis on high speed running in training. Have you implemented this research directly? Has it affected your practice following your findings? Do you do more high speed running, sprinting, particularly with your batsmen now?
100%, definitely do, and it's something that you notice, especially towards the end of shorter format games. I mean, well, basically an entire T20 match, you can have guys doing high intensity running, but especially for one-day games, towards the end, you could end up doing 12, 20-meter sprints. If you can run 6 twos in the space of 3 or 4 minutes. So for the body to be able to take that strain is very important. And I'll stress again the importance of doing it with the equipment.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're defeating the purpose.
So yeah, I think interesting
really,
there.
It's really about sort of nailing down as look again. It's very individualistic, because you're not going to have all bowlers. The time that they take to get back to the mark and deliver the next ball, depending. So like cricket it's a sport it's very unpredictable and uncontrollable. Because you can smash the ball into the stands, and depending on whether there's someone or not to actually collect the ball, it gives you a bit more recovery time. So how do you actually sort of mimic a real match? It's very, very difficult.
Absolutely.
But what you can do is you can by doing the actual training, even if it's a rough estimate in terms of recovery time between sprint bouts or between balls, so to speak, it's important that you put that stress on someone.
Yes.
And for me personally, I tend to err on the more intense side, so that if they do get to that very, very intense stage, that they are prepared for it.
Yes. So I think it's why potentially the batsmen's injuries are overlooked, Dan, as you alluded to. What there's a big focus on fast bowlers is, and Zane, you could maybe attest to it, is that the batsmen's injuries are seen. There's no real time loss. It's like a small hamstring niggle, a groin injury, a lower back pain, things that they can play through. So it's not really seen, or in research, it's not seen as an injury, because they can still play through it. But they're still getting it. It's affecting their performance.
It is, definitely. But that's why what I'm really looking forward to doing, well, hopefully, I always have good feedback from Prof. Leach. What I'm looking to do is look at the acute chronic workload ratio in terms of total workload, and not only, because like you said, in cricket, guys are looking at bowling workloads only, and seeing the risk of injury. But there's a total workload, acute chronic workload ratio that you can look at as well, and just seeing actually how that relates, obviously, with the other aspects that I will be looking at. But I'm definitely looking more into other playing positions as well, and not only bowling.
Absolutely.
Which actually should be very interesting to see.
Yes.
Yes, the rate of injury among other playing positions is not as high, but there are injuries that do occur in those playing positions, So for me, it will be very interesting. For me, there's enough research on fast bowlers.
Yes.
There's more than enough. We don't need to look at fast bowlers anymore. We have enough. We can rest on fast bowlers for the next 10 years, and we should be fine, and we can pick up again. And maybe we'll find something new,
Yes.
Maybe.
No, it's Zane. Just from my side, thank you for taking the time to discuss your research. We really appreciate that. But before any closing thoughts and comments, Dan, anything else you got a question or anything else you want to touch on?
No, not at all. Just again, thank you, Zane, for your time, and we will share this discussion and obviously share your research also. So for those of you watching, if you've got any feedback, as always, it's appreciated. And we'll catch you next time.
Cool, perfect. Thanks, guys. I think just also from my side is just a quick shout out to a gentleman by the name of Andy Moles. Zane will know him. Myself and Zane played under him. He's the ex-Black Caps coach. He recently lost his leg to diabetes, and he's doing some fundraising for the PCA, the Professional Cricketers Association, which is a great cause. You basically run a 10K and you can donate. So I do recommend anyone to just even take a look at it, and our thoughts go out to Andy Moles. And Zane, once again, thank you, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, gents. Good luck, Mr. Vardy, in the Premier League on Wednesday.
Yeah.